The next stuff is going to be pretty in-depth. There were things said on this episode that I didn't yet know enough about to have a comment relating to the Nakba specifically. First, we'll talk a little bit about Anna Kasparian and Ethan, but then that conversation led into some stuff that Ethan said about the Nakba that I can't verify or deny because I'm not entirely sure about the history. And I said to someone on Twitter, like, one thing I've learned the more that I have read about and talked about this with people, like specifically the Israel-Palestine saga going back generations, is that every time you think you've pinpointed, as an outsider, every time I feel like I've pinpointed when something started, like the root of something, someone from the other side says, no, but this happened the day before that triggered this. So it's always like this person did it, then this person did it, then this, then this, then this, then this. And I'm not saying that Israel and Palestine are equal in any way, right? Israel has been the aggressor, the colonizer, all of that shit. But what I'm saying is it is very, very hard in this complex geopolitical issue to figure out where the whole fucking thing starts. Right? That's all I'm saying. I'm not defending Israel at all. But what I'm saying is I am wary of anybody who is confident about where things started on any given issue in this situation.
There's something that I don't think people understand about like the Israeli and the Jewish identity in modern day. There's like a piece of the puzzle that I think people miss. And it's not a value judgment. It's just an explanation. After World War II, Jews all agreed, and somewhat of a pact amongst ourselves, the diaspora everywhere, that we would no longer depend on the generosity of other countries to protect us. Mm-hmm. Right. We no longer depend on Arabs. We no longer depend on Europeans. Jews have been depending on other governments for thousands of years to keep them safe, and they have continually failed them, and which culminated obviously in the Holocaust.
That makes sense to me, right? So far, this makes sense to me. I understand why a people would feel this way, right? I know this is very intense. So I am like, I'm treading lightly. We're going to listen to what Ethan is saying, and then I'm going to look up some stuff. I have a couple sources about what he's talking about. And we'll see what we can find, keeping in mind that none of us are experts as far as I know. We're going to handle this as delicately as we can.
So Jews around the world, they looked around after that and the ashes of the Second World War and said, never again. That's what that means. It means never again will we allow ourselves to be put in this situation defenseless. Never again will we count on the grace of another country, another people, another culture to defend us.
I thought never again meant never. There should never be a Holocaust again. That's what I grew up thinking it was, but maybe I'm wrong. That was my first thing where I was like, oh, that's not how I was exposed to the term, but I'm not, like I said, not an expert, not Jewish. All right, let's see what this says on Wikipedia. Obviously not. Oh, and there's a whole Judaism thread too. So let's start. Never again is a phrase or slogan which is associated with the lessons of the Holocaust and other genocides. The slogan was used by liberated prisoners at Buchenwald concentration camp to denounce fascism. It was used by Jewish Defense League founder Meir Kahan in his 1971 book, Never Again, A Program for Survival. Okay, the exact meaning of the phrase is debated, including whether it should be used as a particularistic command to avert a second Holocaust of Jews, or whether it is a universalist injunction to prevent all forms of genocide. So nothing about like Jews not trusting countries or like governments again, but maybe there's more. In Zionism, an embellished version of the story of Masada became a national myth and was lauded as an example of Jewish heroism. Considered one of the most significant examples. I'm just trying to zoom through this. All right, so they're saying that it came after this. Okay, cultural studies scholars Diana Popescu and Tanya Schultz wrote that there was initially a distinction between political prisoners who invoked never again as part of their fight against fascism and Jewish survivors whose imperative was to never forget their murdered relatives and destroyed communities. Like, that's the way that I always heard it. It was never forget. It kind of meant more like never forget, but I had never heard it as in like we're not going to trust other governments to take care of us. We will take care of ourselves. Let me just see if there's anything else in here. Eric Sundquist notes that the founding of Israel was predicated on the injunction to remember a history of destruction. The destruction of 2 temples, exile and pogroms, and the Holocaust.
Turbo Divergent gave $10. Strange question, but there is a creator in your area that is highly skilled and is super funny called Dan Bell. He's amazing. If you could try to reach out to him, it would make my life.
Like, what do you mean in my area? Swifty says 99% sure it's a new album coming in an hour. Okay, I've never heard of that person. The slogan "Never Again" was used on Israel kibbutzim by the end of the 1940s and was used in the Swedish documentary Mein Kampf in 1961. Okay, unpacking this mechanism "Never Again" would be an enormous task. Suffice to say that this phrase, despite its non-imperative form as a speech act, orders someone to resolve that something shall not happen for a second time. The someone in the first instance is a Jew. The something is usually called the Holocaust. So yeah, it's, as I knew it, it's kind of more contemporary usage. I want to see if there is a place where it's being used the way Ethan says. A lot of Holocaust memorials, yep. As well in commemoration of the Rwanda genocide. It's a prayer, a promise, a vow, never again the glorification of base, ugly, dark violence. Yeah, it seems, yeah, so I don't know where that, okay, here's other uses. It's in Latin America, the Philippines. Yeah, I don't really see it being used the way Ethan says here. I don't know if y'all have ever heard it used that way. All right, let's keep going. So there's that, like, I hadn't heard that version of it.
As a people, they made that decision then and there, and that was kind of where this is where the ethos of this whole like survival mentality.
Yeah, I'll play it back.
To be put in this situation to generosity. They had the same kind of, you know.
Okay.
There's something that I don't think people understand about like the Israeli and the Jewish identity in modern day. There's like a piece of the puzzle that I think people miss, and it's not a value judgment. It's just an explanation. After World War II, Jews all agreed, and somewhat of a pact amongst ourselves, the diaspora everywhere, that we will no longer depend on the generosity of other countries to protect us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally understand that being the meaning. Like, I would have probably felt the same way, right? If my people had been chased out of and ostracized from all these different societies, and then anytime they're told that they're safe and then something horrible happens, and then it all leads to some big horrible thing like the Holocaust, I could understand it being like colloquially among Jews, but not necessarily like publicly, to be never again, we can't trust anyone else. That does seem very like traditionally Zionist, right? Of like, we can't trust anybody but ourselves to keep us safe, which is why we need a state just for us. I don't know Hutch Drama. There is no Hutch Drama. He just strikes me as another debate guy doing the same kind of stuff as like Destiny, but I might be wrong about that. I looked it up, and it seems never again is associated with the Holocaust. Yeah, that's what we've seen, and it is. And Ethan is saying it's associated with the Holocaust, but it's the specific like angle of it is not just never again should we let a Holocaust happen, but never again shall we let a Holocaust happen by trusting other governments to keep us safe. Right? Like that's what it feels like he's saying. It's not a version of the phrase that I am familiar with, but like people said in the comments, it could be something that's like more colloquial, specifically among Jews after World War II who were desperate for a place to feel safe. So much of this shit is rooted in like generational trauma on both sides, right? Like all of these Jews in Europe that were left, right, were traumatized within an inch of their lives. And then a lot of them moved to Israel, right? And they're still fucking traumatized. And then they start traumatizing Palestinians because they want this space for themselves. And so then the Palestinians are traumatized, and they do what they can to fight back. And then that's traumatizing the next generation. And it's just like two peoples who have been victims for so long, just fucking hating each other. And it's hard to fully untangle it.
Right? We no longer depend on Arabs. We no longer depend on Europeans. Jews have been depending on other governments for thousands of years.
And you're right, Chris. This might not necessarily be his belief. Like when he said that whatever the high percentage was of people who are Zionist, he wasn't saying this is good or right. He was just saying the fact of the matter, right?
To keep them safe, and they have continually failed them, and which culminated, obviously, in the Holocaust. So Jews around the world, they looked around after that and the ashes of the Second World War and said, never again. That's what that means. It means never again will we allow ourselves to be put in this situation defenseless. Never again will we count on the grace of another country, another people, another culture to defend us. As a people, they made that decision then and there, and that was
not all Holocaust survivors moved to Israel. Some of them did. A lot of them moved to the US and other countries in Europe.
Kind of this is where the ethos of this whole like survival mentality comes from, right? And that's very much still how people feel. I know World War II was a long time ago, but that type of ethos, that's like a uniting kind of essence of Jews everywhere.
Right. So he's explaining the cultural vibe, for lack of a better word, like the cultural like impetus for a lot of Jews is that they're carrying the trauma of generations of being outcasts and victims and scapegoats, right? And so there's a lot of mistrust there, distrust, and a lot of trauma. And so that's what he's saying when he's talking about this.
Right? Is that I think that's why most Jews see Israel as an important place, as important to the religion. 80% or 70% polled said they think Israel's important to being Jewish.
Yeah, there it is. That's the quote that caused everything to go south with him and Hassan, right? Him just stating a fact that most Jews, like it in their bones, believe that Israel is necessary because of all of the horrors they have heard about, the horrors that they have inherited in their blood, right? None of that means that what Israel is doing is justified. And yes, there are people like the current far-right administration in Israel and the settlers in the West Bank who are fucking psychotic that are manipulating that fear that Jews have to push further colonization, disenfranchisement of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian land. Right?
Because it is that. It is symbolically that. It is it is the promise that Jews made after World War II to never again depend on another people's generosity to defend them. You know? And so now there's lots to debate around all.
I see Manasseh. Again, they want a good guy and a bad guy, and Israel is a bad guy. When real life is never that simple. Yeah, and I would say, like, it's not like England, right? England was just the bad guy. England was not England in the colonization of the world, they weren't this like traumatized people trying to find a place to go, right? They were just fucking capitalist demons, right? Of course, the English, the British, had a role in creating fucking Israel, right? The Balfour Declaration after World War I sort of laid the groundwork for that. And then they owned Palestine for a while. So it's just not apples to oranges. It's not the same as British people, as Europeans moving to the US and killing all the Native Americans. It is similar, but the history of a lot of the people involved is something you have to at least think about, right? Not that that makes it reasonable or understandable or defendable, right? Or defensible, right? That's something I'm just going to keep saying. But like, Jews are a serious minority. They went through hell. I am shocked and saddened that there is any Jew in Israel that is okay with the shit happening in Gaza and the West Bank. Because how do you grow up steeped in the cultural and generational trauma of the Holocaust and hearing that as like the justification of why your country exists, and then you watch the same thing happen and you're kind of fine with it. Like, no, we deserve to genocide them because someone genocided us. Like, that does not fucking make sense to me. Right? That part I don't understand. As a non-Jew, as a non-Israeli, like, I don't understand how anyone, and I'm saying, like Ela says, there is an uprising happening of the people against Netanyahu, against the genocide, against the hostages still being kept, if any of them are still alive, right? That is happening, but there is still a large population of Israelis who don't see the parallels at all. You know? All right, let's keep going because there's a lot to get through.
All of the establishment of Israel, how it.
Yeah, we talked in another stream. I talked about like the migration patterns of Jews out of the Fertile Crescent because of Denham's asserting that Ashkenazi Jews were all like pagan converts and actually didn't have any ancestral lineage to Iraq, which is not fucking true.
Came to be, the Nakba and all that kinds of stuff. But I do think it's important.
Okay, so that's the first mention of the Nakba. And then he just keeps going. And I already knew, as soon as he said it, I knew there's nothing that he can say after that the Hassans of the world are going to take well. Like, that is, I think him opening this door just chummed the waters. And I think the snarkers are going to run crazy with this. I mean, this happened, what, 5 hours ago? 6 hours ago? And there was already someone using a clip from this, from the Snark subreddit in my Twitter messages, my Twitter comments. So they've got the clip. Of course they do. And they're using it. And that's why I wanted to show the clip in its entirety and talk about it, because I know he's going to get hammered for this. And maybe there is some criticism that is valid. And I thought that we could maybe model that together, model some researching and fact checking, right? And show that we are different than the Hassan orbiters and fans and the snarkers, right? We can hold multiple truths. We can learn things, change our minds. We can tell our favorite podcaster, our favorite show host, that maybe he missed something, right? And that doesn't mean that what happened to the Jews in the Middle East was right. You know, like we're just gonna ride into this, and I'm gonna walk you through the way I research. You're gonna see how my brain works on that stuff. It might be familiar to you. It might be the way that you research. You might learn new ways to research. But I have no problem learning more about this before like having a comment, instead of just blindly defending Ethan. Right? I think we can all agree on that. There's no point for Ethan to preemptively censor himself for snark. Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, no matter what he said here, it was gonna get clipped. So let's just learn together. Let's consider this a learning opportunity, and see where it goes from here. Okay. All right. Let me rewind this.
People's generosity to defend them, you know, and so now there's lots to debate around all of the establishment of Israel, how it came to be, the Nakba, and all that kinds of stuff. But I do think it's important to bear in mind the philosophy, the mentality, the survival instincts that kicked in after World War II that persist to this day.
And I think that acknowledging all of that is maybe one of the only ways that we can really change the trajectory of things, right? Like, up until now, it's like neither side wants to acknowledge the other side's own history and trauma and beliefs and feelings and all the shit that's like wrapped up. So I think it's important that we talk about it, right? It doesn't mean it makes people right. It's just the reality of people, right? It's human behavior, it's sociology, it's what people do in groups and what people do when they're scared and what people do when they're threatened, right? It doesn't make it right, but it is what happens. And you kind of have to deal with the reality of human behavior if you want to fix things.
And I mean, of course, the Israelis feel that every day. They're surrounded by countries that have been continually in trying to war with them, destroy them. I mean, you know what happened one day before the Nakba? I don't know if people don't really talk about this. One day before the Nakba. People don't know. What happened one day before the Nakba?
Tell us, Ethan, because I don't know.
Palestinians were living at home?
What?
Oh, AB, yeah. The Palestinians were living at home. Yes, that is true. what sucks is like the Palestinians have gotten caught up in all of this shit from the sound of it. Like from the research I started to do, which we'll get further into. It's like all these other countries invaded Israel. And because Palestine was the neighbor, like they were the ones that got the shit end of it.
I said Palestinians were living at home.
Can someone explain the Israelis taking over homes of Palestinians to me? I hear people say this all the time, but are they talking about now or the 40s? Sadly, it's both. If you look into like the West Bank, the settlers do disgusting things there. Like they're throwing people out, throwing their mattresses out into the street and just claiming their homes in the name of Israel and Judaism. It's really, really, really gross. It's happening even today.
Well, sure.
Yep.
And you know what else happened? Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, all invaded Israel to kill everybody there. They unilaterally, there was 5 Arab countries that unilaterally unified to invade Israel and kill every fucking person there or remove them forcibly. It was the invading fucking Arab armies that told the Palestinians to leave and come back when the war was over. They thought they were going to steamroll all the Jews living there. They didn't. They lost the war, and a lot of the Palestinians who were told to leave and come back never got to come back home. Now a lot of Palestinians did stay in Israel, and those people are citizens today. 2 million plus of them live in Israel proper, which I think is the correct term, not Greater Israel, which is something else.
Poor Ethan and his ticks.
It's funny. There's a clip of Frogan even saying like, my family lost their house in the Nakba. They were told to leave. They were told to leave and come back.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right. So what Ethan seems to be saying here is that before the Nakba, before the Israeli retaliation, that Israel was invaded, like this was like the day that Israel was created, they were invaded by 5 nations, 5 Arab nations, Palestine not one of them because they weren't a nation. Invaded by 5 nations, and those 5 nations told the Palestinians who were living in Israel to evacuate so they wouldn't get hurt. And to come back after. But then they couldn't come back because the Arab nations lost the war. He's putting the blame of the Nakba on Arab countries instead of Israel. Yeah. So we're gonna let's stop the Ethan here and just look at some of the resources that I found to talk more about this. All right. First of all, I found this on the UN. We know that the UN is not like the best. They're not the most effective body, but they are a international governing body. So let's see what they have to say about it. And we're just going to read it through, and then we're going to look at like the general Nakba Wikipedia, and then also I have a pretty in-depth discussion from it's like a historians Reddit, and all of the posts like have sources and stuff, which I love. So that's where we're going to start. It might branch into other places, but I'll just show you like this is how I kind of like get a feel for an issue or a subject. And then from there, I might, look at the different links that are here, or I might Google something that is of interest in here and find a more primary source. I'm going to take these off for now because it's just going to be a lot of reading. Okay. And remember, we are learning here, so let's be nice in chat. The Nakba, which means catastrophe in Arabic, refers to the mass displacement and dispossession of Palestinians during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Before the Nakba, Palestine was a multi-ethnic and multicultural society. However, and this was Palestine, covering what is now Egypt, and then also the West Bank and Gaza, like that whole land. Okay, Palestine was a multi-ethnic and multicultural society. So Palestinians were living there, Arabs from other countries were living there, Jews were living there, Christians were living there, Muslims were living there. However, the conflict between Arabs and Jews intensified in the 1930s with the increase of Jewish immigration driven by persecution in Europe, and with the Zionist movement aiming to establish a Jewish state in Palestine. Now, I wonder if at that time Jewish people were also being driven out of the Arab countries, or if that came after Israel was founded. Because that also happened, right? And I mean, Ethan was talking about that. It was like, was it hundreds of thousands of Jews were driven out of like the different Arab countries, and a lot of them ended up in Israel? They were talking about that during the Hassan debate. In November 1947, the British were absolutely part of this. The British were part of fucking making Israel, like the borders of Israel. It's trash. We'll talk about that in the mandate for Palestine. So that's coming. In November 47, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution partitioning Palestine. How did the UN General Assembly have the fucking right to do that? Partitioned Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab. So this is where the fucking problems begin. Like, that's fine. Like, people are moving there, right? Jewish people are moving to the Middle East because of Hitler, right? If that had just happened, that would have been fine. But the Zionist movement and then like the outside Western forces that were trying to, get a foothold, I feel like that is where everything gets fucked up, right? It's when all of these countries that just want power get in the way of people just trying to find a safe place to be, right? So the UN partitions Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem under a UN administration. The Arab world rejected the plan, arguing that it was unfair and violated the UN Charter. Should I blow this up for y'all? Should I make it a little bigger? Is that better? Okay, so it was going to be two states, which we're still trying to get to today, right? Partitioned it into two states, Jewish and Arab, with Jerusalem under a UN administration. I think Jerusalem was like, oh God, I'm just like so underinformed on this shit, because I feel like Jerusalem was both Jewish and Arab at that time. Jews were living under Jim Crow-like conditions in the Arab countries, so I can see why they would want to leave. Yeah, and then I don't understand why they would do Jim Crow shit to whatever. We'll get there. So the Arab world rejected the plan, arguing that it was unfair and violated the UN Charter. But wasn't it the charter? Jewish militias launched attacks against Palestinian villages. So this is before the Nakba. This was already happening, forcing thousands to flee. The situation escalated into a full-blown war in 1948. This and then this kind of like yada yadas things, you'll see. The situation escalated into full-blown war in 1948 with the end of the British mandate. We'll talk about the mandate. And the departure of British forces, the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel. So literally like the day that the State of Israel was created, and the entry of neighboring Arab armies. So I think this is what Ethan was talking about when he said the day before the Nakba, 5 countries invaded Israel and tried to kill everybody. Does it feel like there should be more information there? I don't know. That feels like maybe there should be more information. The entry of neighboring Arab armies doesn't tell us much about what was happening there, and it's kind of hard to find what exactly was happening during that period. So in response to being invaded by neighboring Arab armies, the newly established Israeli forces launched a major offensive. Okay, so it sounds like Ethan was right about that, right? That they were invaded. Like the day the British left, they were invaded by the neighboring Arab armies. And then they attacked. What I don't understand is it says they launched a major offensive, but they had been invaded. I mean, is that just like launching any kind of attack? Like, were the neighboring Arab armies just like sitting around drinking tea, or were they like fighting? Alexa, pull up day before the Nakba. Yeah, for real. Yeah, what we don't know is if they told Palestinians to leave or not. It was the 40s. They were barely established. I mean, yes, it was literally the day the British left Israel, Palestine. Maybe they got word they were on their way. Maybe. I don't know. So yeah, that kind of just like yada yada'd it. And I was like, And then this is just like an anniversary thing. So I don't expect there to be a ton of information. The result of the war was permanent displacement of more than half of the Palestinian population. But again, I mean, Ethan is saying that a lot of that was because the Arab nations told the Palestinians to leave for safety. And then they just weren't allowed to come back. I do, if that's true, I do find that interesting, right? And that that's what I'm saying. Like, I keep finding when I'm reading about Israel and Palestine is like there's little bits that get left out. Yeah, I wish we could just all hate the Brits, right? I wish we could all hate the Brits and just scrap shit and start over. So then I went and looked at the Nakba, and again, they don't really talk much about the Arab armies helping or telling the people to leave, but obviously what the Israelis, the Jewish people, Israelis and Jews did was horrific during the Nakba. So let's read about it. The Nakba, the catastrophe, is the Israeli ethnic cleansing of Palestinian Arabs through their violent displacement and dispossession of land, property, belongings, along with the destruction of their society and the suppression of their culture, identity, political rights, and national aspirations. The term is used to describe the events of the 1948 Palestine War in Mandatory Palestine, as well as the ongoing, is that the one that I did? Mandatory Palestine was a British geopolitical entity that existed between 1920 and 1948. So, Mandatory Palestine was under British rule after World War I. And then Israel happened. The Brits pulled out. Chaos ensued. As well as the ongoing persecution and displacement of Palestinians by Israel. Yeah, like the settlers of today are doing this kind of shit still. As a whole, it covers the fracturing of Palestinian society and the long-running rejection of the right of return for Palestinian refugees and their descendants. So they just aren't allowed to come back. It reminds me of what happened in Cuba. Like, my friend's family was airlifted out of Cuba in the 70s, I think, during under Castro. And the old Cuban people, until they died, were like, next year in Cuba. Like, they really thought they were going to be able to go back. But they weren't. During the foundational events of the Nakba in 1948, approximately half of Palestine's predominantly Arab population, or around 750,000 people, were expelled from their homes or made to flee through various violent means. At first by Zionist paramilitaries, and after the establishment of the State of Israel by its military. So it started off with settler bullshit, essentially. So, I mean, the founding of Israel from day one has just been violent, disgusting violence, right? But sadly, I imagine this is how a lot of countries are formed, right? We just haven't gotten to watch that happen very much. Like, if you look at what happened in Yugoslavia and everything, I haven't seen, is there a non-violent way for a fucking country to happen? Again, not justifying it. I'm just saying that this is what happens and it's terrible. None of it is excusable. None of it is excusable. And after the establishment of the State of Israel, by dozens of massacres targeted Palestinian Arabs, and over 500 Arab majority towns, villages, and urban neighborhoods were depopulated. Forcibly depopulated, with a majority left being destroyed and left uninhabitable. A big piece of this, I think the uninhabitable part, was like the destruction of the olive groves, the olive tree groves, which were so important to Palestinian people and culture and history. It's just disgusting, like the decimation of the culture and the history. And I mean, you can see it now with like the IDF destroying universities and research and all kinds of like cultural touchstones in Gaza. It's horrible. Many of the settlements were either completely destroyed or repopulated by Jews and given new Hebrew names. Israel employed biological warfare against Palestinians by poisoning village wells. By the end of the war, 78% of the total land area of the former Mandatory Palestine was controlled by Israel. So that wasn't how it was supposed to be, right? They were supposed to be divided, I think, pretty evenly. Let me go to the top of this. Is this the map? No, that's not it. A, B. Map signed by Sykes and Picot, enclosed in the Anglo-French correspondence. Look, there's just so much, guys. There's so much. Commitment regarding the Jewish people, the Balfour Declaration. Palestine and Transjordan on a pre-World War I bid. Okay, so that's not it. Immediately following the declaration of war, the British War Cabinet began to consider the future of Palestine at the time. So they were owned in April 1993, 5 months before the mandate came to force. Britain announced its intention to recognize an independent government in Transjordan. This autonomy increased further under a February 1928 treaty, and the state became fully independent with the Treaty of London, 1946. I'm just trying to find like a map. Okay, so these are the key issues. Okay, this is what I wanted to find. This was interesting to me. Turkey was not a member of the League of Nations at the time of the negotiations. On the losing side of World War I, they did not join until 1932. Decisions about mandates over Ottoman territory. So before the British owned Palestine, Turkey did. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? I just found that very interesting. Okay, so the Conference of Lausanne began November 1922 with the intention of negotiating a treaty to replace the Treaty of Sèvres. In the Treaty of Lausanne, the Turkish government recognized the detachment of the regions south of the frontier agreed in the Treaty of Ankara and renounced its sovereignty over Palestine. So Turkey let go of Palestine in 22, and then the Brits took it over. And so when it was set up, the mandate, this is before Israel was created. This is when it was like British Palestine or whatever it was called. The key issues were a national home for the Jewish people, freedom of religion and education, and the borders. Okay, this is what we wanted to see. Before World War I, the territory which became Mandatory Palestine was the former Ottoman Empire divisions of the Mustasarrafate of Jerusalem and the southern part of Beirut Vilayet. What became Transjordan was the southern. Oh my God. During the war, the British military divided. Okay, let's see. What does it say? 3 proposals for the post-World War I administration of Palestine. International administration proposed in the 1916 Sykes-Picot Agreement. So what was this? 1919, a Zionist organization proposal at the Paris Peace Conference. Final borders of the 1923 to 1948 Mandatory Palestine. Shut the fuck up. Okay. Okay, so this was all Palestine. a geopolitical entity, but not recognized as a government. I don't believe that all Jews in Israel believe that they're supporting a genocide. I think many believe they are needing to take extreme measures to protect themselves. Yeah, and we talked about that. Like there's the like Ethan said, there is like this like survival instinct, because as we saw on the UN page, that Israel was immediately invaded, like at the day that they became Israel, right, by the different towns. But what happened after that was disgusting, right? They don't really talk about it here. The roots of the Nakba are traced to the arrival of the Zionists and their purchase of land in Ottoman Palestine in the late 19th century, right? So Turkey owned Palestine at that time. Zionists wanted to create a Jewish state in Palestine with as much land, as many Jews, and as few Palestinian Arabs as possible. This is according to Manna 2022. The principal objective of the Zionist leadership to keep as few Arabs as possible in the Jewish state. In the 1948 war, when it became clear that the objective that enjoyed the unanimous support of Zionists of all inclinations was to establish a Jewish state with the smallest possible number of Palestinians. That sucks, right? That sucks. I don't like that. Yeah, Palestine is completely locked in, and the Green Line is actively being pushed past. They have nowhere to go. Yeah, and the Green Line, I mean, I saw stuff about like real estate over the Green Line, and like at this place in New Jersey, they were doing like a real estate conference trying to get people to move past the Green Line. After the partition of the Ottoman Empire, which is when Turkey gave up control of Palestine to Britain, British-ruled mandatory Palestine began in 1922. This we already know, right? We saw it in another thing. By then, the Jewish population had grown to about 10%. It was 6% in 1917 during the Balfour Declaration. So numbers are going up because Jews aren't wanted in a lot of different places, right? They were getting kicked out of Europe. They were getting kicked out of Arab countries as well, or Muslim majority countries. Both the Balfour Declaration and the Mandate for Palestine referred to the 90% Arab population as existing non-Jewish communities. So they were really centering the Jewish communities there. Is everyone being cool in chat? Is everyone being cool? Okay, everyone wants me to talk about Kendra tomorrow. I'll see if I can do enough research to feel good about that. All right, following World War II and the Holocaust, obviously this is when everything ramped up. Again, just fucking men committing violence and ruining everything. You know what's up. In February 1947, the British declared that they would end the mandate and submit the future Palestine to the newly created United Nations for resolution. Ah, okay. So that's why the UN was involved. They were brand new. Their first job was figuring out Israel-Palestine. No pressure, guys. No pressure. You really nailed it. The UN Special Committee on Palestine was created in September of 1947. They submitted a report recommending partition, so two-state. Palestinians and most of the Arab League were opposed to the partition. So Palestinians wanted all of the land to remain Palestine. To me, that's completely reasonable, right? Up until this point, they had always been Palestine. That totally makes sense to me. And at that time, Jews were a minority, but I'm assuming people were living pretty okay with each other. I don't see proof that there was like there were horrible things happening. It was just like a multicultural kind of place. But maybe that's rose-colored glasses. I don't know. So Palestinians and the Arab League opposed, right? They don't want a two-state. Zionists accepted the partition, but plan to expand Israel's borders beyond what was allocated by the UN. Like, just fucking be cool. Like, this is what, like, it's the fucking greediness for me, right? First of all, there's this, I feel like there's an assumption that Jews and Arabs could not live together, right? That was impossible. So then all of these other countries decided what to do about this, the Palestine problem, right? Like they had to split them up. Like, why? In the autumn of 1947, Israel and Jordan, with British approval, secretly agreed to divide the land allocated to Palestine between them after the end of British mandate. So Jordan is fucked up too. There was a lot of arguing over religious cultural sites. Right. That does make sense to me. So there was already sneaky shit happening in 1947, right? Like, not just the Zionists, but also Jordan is trying to get some of Palestine too. So this was the plan. Let me see if I can zoom on this. Can I zoom in? Yes. Oh, beautiful. État Arabe. Oh, thank God I speak French. Am I right? Like, okay. The Jewish state is, from what I've heard, this is mostly desert, but that might be wrong. Because I did hear that from someone who is a Zionist. So, when they talk about like, oh, this is all Israel, it's like, and that was all Palestine before. It's like, well, that's just like mostly desert, but I don't know if that's true. That's just what I've heard. So, I mean, Israel already seemed to have a lot of the partition. And what's annoying is the greed to try to get more when you already have so much. Like, just fucking let people live. And the interesting thing is, yeah, the city of Jerusalem is kind of like neither. It's like neither, but it's in the middle. But then you have this weird shit, like on what planet did this look like a good way to split things? I heard that most of the fertile land went to the Israel side. I mean, you can see that, right? They get all of this coastline. The Arab state is like inland. They have like limited water access because this is all Egypt here, right? The only water access for Palestinians is either Gaza. There's Khan Yunis down there. There's Gaza or up here near the Lebanese border. So already it looks unfair to the people that have lived there forever, right? Not to say that there were not Jews who have lived in this region forever. But I feel like if you were a Jew that had lived there forever, you would have felt the same way. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is weird. Proposed by the Ad Hoc Committee on the Palestinian Question. Boundary proposed by the UNSCOPR. So the UN boundary is actually this green line. But what kind of boundary? That's hard to see. It's hard to see what the original lines were. But this is what was proposed. It's a fucking... I mean, how do you look at this? How do you look at this and think, yeah, that's not going to cause any problems? Israel got 55% of the land, but Jews were only 33% of the population. Yeah, that's like bound to be a problem. It reminds me a little bit of Liberia. Do you guys know anything about Liberia? Another fascinating situation where America, the United States, did not know what to do with all of its formerly enslaved people. And so they decided to ship a bunch of them to Liberia, a West African country, the capital of which is Monrovia, named after our president, Monroe. And yeah, you can imagine it didn't go great. It fucking didn't go great. A bunch of people who were not from there were suddenly living there and feeling entitled to things, right? General Butt Naked from Liberia is one of my favorite characters in politics. Yes. So yeah, like that's what it reminds me of. That's what it's always reminded me of. Less of like Americans, or less of like colonizers coming to like the British coming to America and killing everybody, and more of formerly enslaved people needing or wanting a new safe home and going somewhere and assuming that they had the right to that land because they were told they were, and then being like, oh shit, there's other people here who feel the same way, right? Like, why is no one talking about that? I feel like Liberia is like a great example. It's a much better example than comparing it to the US, I think. Anyway, so let's go back to... Can I fucking shut this? Where is it? Oh, okay, let me go back here. So there's a partition plan. So yeah, Israel and Jordan are trying to do crazy shit. Okay, so November 1947, the resolution passes on this partition plan. And we have Israel and Palestine. But how was there no plan for Palestine to become its own state? Like, that's what I don't understand. I imagine that comes from later wars and shit. Okay, so at the time, Arabs made up about 2/3 of the population, right? So 1/3 of the population were Jews, and they got a lot of the land. Arabs made up 2/3 of the population and owned about 90% of the land, while Jews made up between 1/4 and 1/3 of the population and owned about 7% of the land. The UN partition planned to allocate to Israel about 55% of the land. This is what, was it ABC saying this? Yes. So the partition planned to give Israel 55% of the land. 90% of it was owned by Palestinians or Arabs, where the population was about 500,000 Jews and 407,000 to 438,000 Arabs. Okay, so yes, there's Jews and Arabs living in this new partition of Israel, of course, because they've been there the whole time, right? Palestine was allocated the remaining 45% of the land, where the population was about 725,000 to 818,000 Arabs and 10,000 Jews. So there were Jews in the Palestine partition as well. Jerusalem and Bethlehem were to be an internationally governed corpus separatum with a population of 100,000 Arabs and 100,000 Jews. How fucking stupid and arbitrary is that? I'm sorry. How do you think that that's going to go well? It just all feels like very symbolic. Like, yeah, we'll solve the issue of the religious sites being debated by having just a set number of Arabs and Jews in these areas that aren't necessarily belonging to either country. How fucking stupid. Okay. The partition plan was considered by detractors to be pro-Zionist, with 56% of the land allocated to the Jewish state, although the Palestinian Arab population numbered twice the Jewish population. Yeah, I don't understand why it needed to be so big. I don't see why it needed to be divided in the first place, but I don't understand the geopolitics at play, right? Like, I don't understand. I don't know how bad it was. Like, couldn't the Jews just have been... I know it's the Zionists that really fucking ruined it. It's the Brits that ruined it, right? Because the Jews could have just been immigrants. But a lot of them, I guess, were tired of being immigrants, right? They were tired of going places where they were outnumbered and getting kicked out. I understand that. But, like, this plan... This fucking plan is terrible. This whole thing was screwed from the beginning. I don't know how we get out of this, guys. The plan was celebrated by most Jews in Palestine. Well, yeah, because they were like, yeah, we get more land. But like the whole idea of like segregating populations is a bad idea. Like the fact this was determined at a time when segregation was cool, right? Like schools in the US were still segregated. So they were like, yeah, segregation works, man. Let's just do segregation. There's definitely not like an end in sight for that. Hang on, how much time we got left? 11 minutes. 11 minutes. So everyone's fucking mad. Obviously. They also okay, so the Arab Higher Committee, the Arab League, and other Arab leaders and governments rejected it on the basis that in addition to the Arabs forming a 2/3 majority, they owned a majority of the lands. Right. So that means that the land had to be forcibly taken from the Arabs in the area, right? They also indicated an unwillingness to accept any form of territorial division. Like I'll bet my bottom dollar they didn't buy those lands, right? Any form of territorial division. So the Arabs did not want any division at all, arguing that it violated the principles of national self-determination in the UN Charter, which granted people the right to decide their own destiny. Okay, I agree with that. They announced their intention to take all necessary measures to prevent the implementation of the resolution. So that's why they invaded Israel. Because they were like, absolutely fucking not. Listen, I understand. I get it. I understand why they were pissed. But did all of the countries need to be involved? Like, I think that's where it gets murky for me, is like this becomes like a war by proxy, right? Where it's like all of the Arab countries against the Jewish country. When this was like a battle, should have been like a battle of the Palestinians, who greatly outnumbered the Jews, right? Maybe I'm speaking out of my ass, but like that piece of it. But I guess the Jews were backed by the West, right? They were backed by essentially the UN, who approved the partition, and the Brits and the US and everybody. So it's a fucking mess. The central facts of what happened in the Nakba are well established, documented, and widely agreed upon by most Israeli, Palestinian, and other historians. All right, so this is what Ethan was talking about, like the lead up to it. Thousands of Palestinians were killed and dozens of massacres. Great. About a dozen rapes of Palestinians by regular and irregular Israeli military forces have been documented, and more are suspected. Because what? Men be raping. Men be raping. Even Hamas. Israelis use psychological warfare, targeted violence, whispering campaigns, loudspeaker bans. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. Small scale local skirmishes began on November 30th, 1947, and gradually escalated until March of 1948. When the violence started, Palestinians had already begun fleeing, expecting to return after the war. Okay, so shit was happening on both sides, and people were like, I'm out of here. I'll be back when this is over, right? It doesn't seem like at this point they were forcibly being pushed out. The massacre and expulsion of Palestinian Arabs and destruction of villages began in December. Okay, so that's when Israel really ramped it up. And this is, by the way, they're not even Israel yet. They're not even Israel yet. Because that was 48. By March, between 70,000 and 100,000 Palestinians, mostly middle and upper class urban elites, were expelled or fled, right? Because they had like the means to leave. But there were also massacres happening. So what's not mentioned here, under intense public anger over Palestinian losses and seeking to take Palestinian territory for themselves, the remaining Arab League states decided in late April to enter Okay. So this is what I'm talking about when I say every time I think there is like the root of something in this issue is clear, go 3 days back. Like Ethan saying, oh, the day before the Nakba, guess what happened? Okay, well, months before the Nakba, there were skirmishes happening, and Israelis, or future Israelis, like Israeli paramilitary people, were pushing people out, already massacring people. Known as the Al-Qisas massacre, was an attack on the Palestinian village of Al-Qisas carried out by the Palmach. Who the fuck is that? On December 18th, 1947, during the 1948 Palestinian War, 10 to 15 Palestinian villagers were killed in the attack, including 5 children. Okay, hang on. The Palmach. Now I have to look that up. Okay. The elite combined strike forces unit of the Haganah, the main paramilitary organization of the Yishuv, the pre-1948 Jewish community in Palestine during the period of British Mandate. Okay, so under the British Mandate, there was a Jewish paramilitary group, like a militia. Over 2,000 men and women in 3 fighting brigades and auxiliary aerial, naval, and intelligence units. They were only established in 1941, aimed to defend the Palestinian Jewish community against 2 potential threats. Firstly, the occupation of Palestine by the Axis in the event of their victory over British in North Africa. Okay, so they were first established to protect Palestine from Hitler. Secondly, if the British army retreated from Palestine, Jewish settlements might come under attack from the Arab population. Okay. Do you see how deep this shit goes? Okay. 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes till Taylor. Ain't no way we're getting to the rest of this show tonight. This is crazy. Where was I? Oh, okay. So already the Palmach is carrying out intimidation massacres, essentially. Helping to push people out. At no point so far am I seeing that the Arabs are telling Palestinians to leave, but maybe that comes here. Okay, so before the Arabs invade, there are already maybe 100,000 people, Palestinians, who have left or are expelled. Then that's when the Israelis launched Plan Dalet, a large-scale offensive to capture land and empty it of Palestinian Arabs. One second. This is in April. Because May 1948 is when they actually became Israel. So it didn't start on the Day of Israel, right? It doesn't start with the Arabs invading on the Day of Israel. It started before that. Okay, now I'm fucking lost. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Israel captured and cleared land that was allocated to the Palestinians by the UN Partition Resolution. So I imagine this is part of their secret plan to get more surface area. Over 200 villages were destroyed during this period. Massacres and expulsions continued. Yeah, so how does this protect anyone from fucking whatever? Over 200 villages were destroyed. Major Palestinian cities were depopulated, including Tiberias, Haifa, Acre, Safed, and Jaffa, and the Palestinian Arab neighborhood in West Jerusalem as well. Israel began engaging in biological warfare, poisoning the water supply, which we saw. In May, one such operation caused a typhoid epidemic. Oh, typhoid's a salmonella. I didn't know that. Oh my God, that's awful. So it gave them all fucking food poisoning. Another attempt in Gaza was foiled by the Egyptians. Under intense public anger over Palestinian losses. Okay, this is where the Arab League steps in. So it wasn't, I think Ethan was wrong about this, for sure. That there was even more before that is the Israeli the pre-Israelis were doing before the Arab League stepped in, right? They were already trying to like do a land grab. The armies of the new, okay. The Arab League states decided in late April and early May to enter the war after the British left. So that's when Israel was created. However, the armies of the newly independent Arab League states were still weak and unprepared for war. And none of the Arab League states were interested in the establishment of an independent Palestinian state, with Amin al-Husseini at its head. Okay, so they weren't really invested. The Arabs who invaded, the Arab countries who invaded, didn't really care if Palestine existed. Then that to me means, yeah, they just wanted the Jews out. So there's truth there, right? Neither the expansionist King Abdullah I of Jordan nor the British wanted the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. So no one fucking wanted this except the people who lived there, which is terrible. On May 14th, the mandate formally ended, the British troops left, and Israel declared independence. By that time, Palestinian society was destroyed, and over 300,000 Palestinians had been expelled or fled. On May 15th, Arab League armies entered the territory of former mandatory Palestine, beginning 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Most of the violence up to that point occurred in and around urban centers. British troops were still present. Okay. At the end of the mandate, Israel seized more land allocated to the Palestinians by the UN Partition Plan. We saw that. The Tantura Massacre. Cool. Oh my God. The first truce between Israel and the Arab League nations was signed in early June and lasted about a month. Great. In the summer of 1948, Israel began implementing anti-repatriation policies to prevent the return of Palestinians to their homes. A transfer committee coordinated and supervised efforts to prevent Palestinian return, including the destruction of villages, resettlement of Arab villages with Jewish immigrants, confiscation of land, and the dissemination of propaganda discouraging return. During the 10 days of renewed fighting between Israel and the Arab states, over 50,000 Palestinians were expelled. A second truce was signed in mid-July and lasted until October. God, it's just been fucking fighting since day one. During two truces, Palestinians who returned to their homes, labeled infiltrated by the Israelis, were killed or expelled. Great. Oy. There's just so much. But yeah, okay, so I know we have Taylor news, but so everything that the Israelis were doing is really fucking bad. And I think that Ethan's explanation of like the mindset that people were in at that time provides some context, but to me, it doesn't provide an understanding of why they needed to, like, oh shit, what happened? Why they needed to do like a fucking extra land grab. But then at the same time, oh, Taylor Swift, the website's completely crashed. But then at the same time, the Arabs didn't even want that partition, so they were going to fuck shit up anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what would have happened. Like, really, the root of it all is these outside nations playing with the region like it's fucking puzzle pieces. So, yeah, I wouldn't... I feel like anytime you talk about this shit, you have to go all the way back. You gotta go all the way back to the beginning. So yeah, that's where I'm landing on it. I'm still obviously like, we just read through a lot of shit, right? So it's like I understand Ethan's defensiveness because he is carrying the intergenerational trauma of Holocaust victims, right? But I do think there was a lot of context missing from saying, oh, well, the day before the Nakba, the Arabs invaded, right? Because in the days and months before that, Israel, not even Israel, the paramilitary organizations in mandatory Palestine who were Jewish were already trying to push Palestinians out. And Israel and Jordan were trying to take more of the Palestinian land for each other, for themselves, right? So, yeah, I think that his summing it up was not as accurate as I wish it was, right? And yeah, it's such a deep issue. It's such a deep issue, and I thought extra land grabs happened after a war in the 60s. I get you lose land when you lose war, but not when you are a part of the same country. Right. And then it's like, you have to kind of go all the way back to the fact that the Arabs were going to lose like 50% of their land, like something crazy. Like, I understand, like, that wasn't fair. Like, that was not fair at all. That was not fucking fair. The Arabs invaded out of their own self-interest. Palestinians got screwed by both sides. Exactly, right. Because, like it said, the Arabs didn't really care if Palestine was a state. I think they didn't, those other states, to Ethan's point, they did not want Jews gaining power in their region, right? They saw that as a threat. They saw another group of people gaining power as a threat. Would that have happened if they were Christians? Probably, right? They're like a different people, a different way of life. You know, they're coming in and they're taking what's ours, right? What's Arab land. But it seems like the Arab countries were only interested in Palestine insofar as they could benefit from it. Like either taking some of the land for themselves, like Jordan, or waging some sort of religious war, like the others, right? Why wouldn't Israel let Palestine be their own country with their own laws then, or in the 2000s? In the early 2000s, they had all Jews leave Gaza. Why not do that again? It's become just so fucking rotted. I don't even know. Why didn't Israel just let them leave and become their own country? Well, I don't know how their perceptions have changed over time, but they didn't want two states. They wanted all of it, right? The Arabs, the Palestinians, they wanted the whole area. But the wild thing is, it's like, was it ever just theirs? Because it was under Turkish rule and then it was under British rule. I mean, it must have to have gone way back to have just been theirs. So yeah, I think Ethan spoke out of turn about the Nakba. Like, I don't think that they're it was not really retaliatory. Maybe to some degree, right? Israel kind of started it and then finished it, you know? It seems kind of like Korea, where they were always under someone else's thumb. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. This goes fucking way back. Palestine itself was among the earliest regions to see human habitation, agricultural communities, and civilization. Because of its location, it has historically been seen as a crossroads for religion, culture, commerce, and politics. How fucking sad that this is how such a rich place has ended, you know? Ugh. Bronze Age, the Canaanites established city-states influenced by surrounding civilizations, among them Egypt, which ruled during the Iron Age. Two related Israelite kingdoms, Israel and Judah, controlled much of Palestine. And that's where Denham's was like, well, the Israelites weren't actually Jewish, which is not, we know now is not fucking true, right? There were always Jews there. The Assyrians conquered the region in 8th century BCE, then the Babylonians in 601 BCE, followed by the Persian. Oh my God, they've just been conquered over and over and over again. Because of its location, because it was like such a, like an optimal location, just over and over and over again conquered. So yeah, I mean, it's the way that... It just sucks because there are so many similarities, right? Like Palestine has seemingly never been itself, right? Like it's been conquered over and over and over and over and over again. Jews have never felt at home anywhere. They've been pushed out over and over and over and over again. It's like they're so close to like understanding each other. But then there's just all of this like greed and power and violence and selfishness and religion and like all of this gross shit. Yeah, I mean religion is like is such a fucking problem. So that's as far back as I want to go. 2nd century BC. I do want to recommend a book. I know a lot of people recommend nonfiction when talking about Palestine, right? Like in the history and stuff. And it is so fascinating. There's so much of it. Like I'm definitely going to do a lot more just like clicking around probably tomorrow. But the novel Salt Houses by Hala Alian, who's a Palestinian author, one of my favorite books of all time. It is so beautiful and it is so... It's just such a wonderful book. And it really captures like the soul of Palestinians, I think, and the way that's the book. And the way that like there's just so much yearning for a home that maybe never existed, but you miss it anyway, or you know, everything that's been lost and like the generational weight of that. And also one of the characters is like older and has dementia, so there's like this element of like forgetting, and it's just like forgetting but also being stuck in the past. It's just a beautiful book. 10 out of 10 recommended. I kind of want to read it again. Yeah, Taylor Swift is coming out with a new album, but we don't know when. Oh, I like that. The Irish word for that feeling. Yeah, the Irish understand it too. It's a beautiful book. It really is. It's just a gorgeous book. So 3 hours feels good, right? I had more stuff to talk about, but this is just where we ended. I think it was important to really talk. Oh, let's end on this. Let's end on something we can all agree on, which is that Netanyahu is a fucking demon from hell. And here is Ethan asserting that. Here he is shitting on Netanyahu. I think we can all say fuck the Brits and fuck Netanyahu.
So everybody in the Middle East is it's getting fucked, right? It's horrible. There's war. There's conflict. There's ethnic cleansing. It's this continual shit show. And there's a genocide happening to Gazans. You know, just a horrific fucking development and what Netanyahu and they're all doing there. Dude, I'm ready. I'm ready to send Netanyahu to the...
Ooh. Send him with Ben Shapiro.
I'm ready to fucking... I don't know if I can say this, but...
Dan's like,
that guy
don't.
should be... Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm right there with you guys. Let's put him on the...
You think you're the only one? Have you seen all the protests in Israel?
Him and his...
Nobody in Israel supports what he's doing.
That's
Nobody.
the thing, too.
I don't think that's true, right? There are still a lot of extremists there. I don't know if there have been like recent surveys, but I'm happy to know that no one Ela knows and no one Ela knows of is supportive of this. I think it's one of those things where like in the big cities, everyone probably fucking hates him, right? But the more rural communities, the more extreme communities are probably just loving it, right?
Social... chaos, like, you know, Netanyahu wants to occupy the entire Gaza Strip. It's just chaos, right?
Chaos.
People have been on the street all day, every day. I mean, nobody supports what he's doing.
Just a quick correction. I'm seeing that people commemorate the Nakba on May 15th, but it started in 1947. That's what I'm seeing.
Why do they commemorate it on May 15th?
This catastrophe.
It's a long, it's not, you're not going to be able to sum it up in 5 seconds, AB. Like, you're not wrong. We've clearly learned tonight that it did start well before May 15th, right? In like dribs and drabs, and then it escalated, and then that is why the Arab League invaded. But we all know this now, right? At least we all think Netanyahu sucks. At least we all think that, right? That's good. But see, we were able to do some research, learn some things, open our minds, change our minds, disagree with Ethan, with each other, and we're all still cool. This is almost too serious for me. I'm tired of war. I know. I highly recommend, I'll share it here if you guys are interested in it, because we didn't even need to use this because there's just so much content, but I'm going to put it in my description too. This is the link on Ask Historians about the actual underlying facts and the underlying causes of the Nakba. So there was like a bunch of great information there.